The last point I want to make is that, the question's been asked, is there any hope? And the question, what is the point of the House of Lords? I'm more optimistic about the House of Lords than Lord Moylan. But, for example, the Constitution Committee is saying the House of Lords plays an important role in the legislative process. It is constitutionally appropriate for the House to scrutinise the bill and, if so minded, vote to amend it or reject it. So there is hope in the House of Lords. I think, and I think Lord Moylan does lean towards his view that it may be that the bill never gets to a third reading. It's just the sheer internal contradictions of the bill will just make it politically impossible to progress. So I think there is hope.
Thank you very much. Hannah?
To this lady here, is it a conspiracy or a series of unintended consequences? I think the latter. I'm always generally a cock-up of a conspiracy, but I think MPs probably, it's too late now, but they really have to examine what their purpose is. To vote through something which we've discussed, and I think they would acknowledge that the detail is just not there, with the hope that some of that detail will be added in the Lords, there will be an extra level of scrutiny. I think we really have to ask if that's good enough or not when it is something so important. For me, that's what's been so disappointing, really, in terms of the process, that more people weren't willing to say, look, the detail just isn't there at the moment, so how can we legislate for that? I don't think it's a conspiracy, though. My understanding would be that, yes, if a party won the next general election, whoever that is, on a manifesto commitment to overturn legislation, were it already being enforced, then I think they could, is my understanding, but maybe I'll speak correctly. This lady here who talks about, well, effectively the slippery slope argument, that does concern me too. Proponents of the bill say this is very tightly drafted and it's very specific, 6 months, a terminal, a diagnosis that is 6 months to live. But we have seen in jurisdictions that started out pretty narrowly that it has become expanded over time. And I wrote some time ago about particularly the Netherlands, where mental health conditions are now included as well as physical health, and it's deeply alarming. Young women, massively disproportionately, women who are not old, who have mental health difficulties, ending their lives through state-sponsored assisted dying or suicide, whichever language you want to use. So I am concerned about that as well. This gentleman here, interestingly, I met a Belgian doctor as well, relatively recently, who was very, very compassionate man and said it works. I'm sorry for the loss of your mum, and I can totally relate to this sibling conversation. My brother was killed in an accident in the summer, which I won't dwell on because I've just started. It's an incredibly difficult conversation to have. I know my parents have said just push me off the cliff, and I don't want to lose my marbles, and I don't want to be not a burden on you, but they've just been, I don't want to live like that. So that decision will never be completely mine. But I think it does put families in a very difficult position. The thing is, when I said earlier that I would want it for myself and my families, because I know that we're very open with each other, and I would respect my parents' wishes and vice versa. But that is not a good way to make law, and I think we saw this time and time again in the committee stage. We can all think of individual cases, and I feel desperately sorry for people that have had very painful, long, drawn-out deaths. And there is obviously a compassion argument, but we can't make law from anecdote, and I fear that's really what we're about to do.
Thank you. Thanks, Annie. Daniel, well, thank you all after it.
I'll just deal with this question of language, because by the time I came to make my second readings, I'd asked to speak late, so I spoke after I got 134 on the list or something. So I didn't expect there to be much to say about the technicalities or the principle of the bill, so I went back to this question of language. And the point about euphemism, it's full of euphemism. The bill refers throughout to this thing called assistance. You're going to get, it avoids words death, killing, suicide, anything like that. It's going to be assistance. I said, no, is that can become part of our daily language? So, have you considered assistance, Mrs. Smith? The poison is called the approved substance. The still mysterious contraption by which it's going to be delivered is the approved device. So the point about euphemism, and I said this, is that it's the technique, it's the ancient Greek technique for trying to deceive and hide from the gods through the use of distorted language, something you're ashamed of. That is why they use this language, is that at bottom they think it is something shameful. And we shouldn't be embarrassed about saying that. The euphemism itself tells you as much as you need to know about this bill as any of the technical detail. And we should be calling it out all the time.
We call it Orwellian, don't we? It's just euphemism, it's Orwellian language. You mentioned judge plus. I mean, that's Orwellian, isn't it? There's no judge there at all.
No judge at all.
That's an excellent point. I really endorse that point. Yes, Reggie.
I maybe just take the point about conspiracy and hope. Is it a conspiracy? I mean, by and large, I agree with Hannah. Generally, in my experience in government, it's almost always cop-out rather than conspiracy. But I will say this. I very much doubt that Kim Leadbeater would have chosen this as her PMB, and that it would have passed second reading were it not for the personal support of Keir Starmer. And I also very much doubt that Keir Starmer would have had the political capital to do this as a government bill, vis-a-vis his own cabinet. Make your inferences from that, and whether you want to call that a conspiracy or just factors, one can draw one's inferences. In terms of is there hope, I think what people need to push for is that every political party at the very least commits to make time, as soon as they are elected, for a free vote in Parliament on whether to continue with this or not. So that's kind of the first immediate step. And secondly, political parties, if you're members of them, and if you go to candidate selection meetings, you should ask candidates, where do you stand on this issue? I know certainly when I did when I selected a candidate for the Conservatives in Westminster, not that we won that seat in the end, but I think me or a friend of mine did ask the question, where do you stand on this issue? And every possible political candidate for a political party must be asked the question.
Thank you very much, and can we thank our panel for some